What is wrong with the Kansas City Chiefs? All right, welcome in. It is the Breer Report for Wednesday, November the 19th. We are going to recap all things Week 11. I apologize that we're a day late in doing this, but we're going to start where we normally do, which is with the last thing we saw, which was the Dallas Cowboys absolutely taking apart the Las Vegas Raiders on Monday Night Football. And I think what we saw in that game, more than just a dominant Cowboys win, was the vision for the Cowboys in 2025 starting to come together. The question is going to be, and we'll get to this in a minute, is it too late? They're 4-5-1. Can they make the NFC playoffs based on where they are? But I think what we've seen again is where they are on offense, where they're going on offense, and they're in a really good place there. George Pickens has been a really nice compliment to CD Lamb. There are obvious questions on whether or not this is a long-term fix at receiver, whether or not George Pickens is going to be there in 2026. Those are questions for another day. Right now, Pickens and Lamb are playing really good together. You've got Jake Ferguson at tight end, really functional tight end. You've got Javonte Williams really starting to emerge as the lead back there. And then that offensive line has started to come along. We knew it was going to take some time with some young players. You've got the veteran quarterback in Dak Prescott. Again, we knew they were going to be pretty good offensively. They have been pretty good offensively. To me, the difference maker here now is the defense. And it took a while for the Cowboys' plan to really manifest. Starts with the trading of Micah Parsons, obviously, over the summer. And part of their misgivings in giving Micah Parsons the sort of contract that he wanted was looking at how they were playing team defense, looking at Micah sometimes playing outside the structure of the defense to make plays, and then looking at the effect that it was having on their run defense. So as part of the Parsons trade, in addition to the first-round picks that they got, they acquired Kenny Clark from the Green Bay. Now, remember, they acquired Kenny Clark after signing Osa Odighizuwa to a big deal in the offseason. So now you got two defensive tackles that you can build your defense around in Clark and Odighizuwa, at least in the short term. I know Clark's a little older. Then as the season goes on, you start to incorporate more five-man fronts. This is some of the stuff that you saw from Matt Eberflus over the course of the past. And some of Matt Eberflus's best defenses were built around a dominant defensive tackle. In Indianapolis, that was DeForest Buckner. So you've got Osa Odighizuwa, you've got Kenny Clark, and then you take some of the capital that you got from Micah Parsons and you trade it for Quinnen Williams. And so now you've got Quinnen Williams, Kenny Clark, and Osa Odighizuwa in a rotation. Sometimes you're able to get all of them on the field at the same time when you're going to that five-man front. And again, I know the Raiders aren't the best opponent. I know the Raiders' offensive line isn't top of the league. But what we saw was a ton of pressure coming from up the middle. They had 11 quarterback hits, which is a very high number, on Monday night against the Raiders. 9 of those 11 quarterback hits came from defensive tackles. 5 of them were from Quinnen Williams alone. And so I think what you're seeing is the start of the vision here of having a defense that's able to pressure from the inside out. They do like their young edge rushers, but being able to pressure from the inside out is the vision here. It was the vision for Matt Eberflus's defenses in the past. It's the vision for this defense now. And now we'll see where this goes. And we'll learn a lot about the Cowboys over the next couple of weeks. They're 4-5-1 now. They have the Eagles this week. And then 4 days later, they have the Chiefs on Thanksgiving. So where the season's going, I think that gets determined very much so in the next week or so with those games against the Eagles and the Chiefs. And then a week after that, they have the Lions on a Thursday night. So again, do they come out of that 4-8-1? Do they come out of that 7-5-1? Like, how does that look coming out of that 3-game stretch? That'll obviously go a long way in determining where the Cowboys are come January. All right, our second topic, and this is one that everybody's talking about. What is wrong with the Kansas City Chiefs? They're 5-5. That's as bad a 10-game start as the Chiefs have had in a decade. It's the worst 10-game start of Patrick Mahomes' career. And I think the first question has to be, is the talent good enough? Is the talent around the quarterback where it needs to be? And I think that's still an open question, but I do like the pieces that they have. And I look at like what they've got offensively. The big problem over the last couple of years, and this is something they've really worked on, is their inability to get the ball downfield. They can't do it the same way they used to be able to. In 22 and 23, they made it happen with bigger receivers who weren't the deep threats that they had back in the day with Tyreek Hill and guys like Sammy Watkins. So they reinvest in guys who can stretch the field, who can get downfield. Guys like Xavier Worthy, drafted him in the first round. Hollywood Brown, you go out and get him in free agency. Tyquan Thornton, you take a flyer on him. And so, like, those guys have been good players thus far for the Chiefs. Can those guys become field stretchers for them over the course of the back end of the year? Can Josh Simmons settle in at left tackle? What are they doing in the running game? Are they able to have a viable running game with Kareem Hunt and Isaiah Pacheco coming back off of injury? And then defensively, can Steve Spagnuolo turn that group back into a dominant unit? They've got the pieces there. Chris Jones, George Karlaftis, Nick Bolton, Trent McDuffie. They've got guys at every level of the defense. Now can they put that together? So I think the players are in place to make this happen and to get them in the playoffs. And then no one's going to want to play Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid in the playoffs. Here's the bigger question to me, though. They are aging in a few spots. They're younger in other spots, but they are aging in a few spots. And the amount of damage this team has taken on over the course of the last few years, I think just raises an interesting question on where they are. Now, if you add it up, and I did this, right? So go back to their first Super Bowl run in 2019. All right, that's 6 postseasons. They've played a total of 19 playoff games over those 6 postseasons. No one's ever played that many in NFL history in that short stretch. So that's 19 games in 6 postseasons. In addition, like in adding to the historic nature of this 6-year period for the Chiefs. All right, no one's ever been to 5 Super Bowls in 6 years. And the league went to 17 games in the third year of that stretch. So now we're talking about 17 games of 4 of those 6 years, which is, again, not precedented. So that's an extra 23 games. Now you add onto that the fact that they're taking on everyone's best shot every single week. And there is a wear and tear that comes to that, and that you are everyone's big game. And I just think that there is a level of damage that you take on. And I think the great Patriots teams felt this over the years as well. This is on another level because of the amount of games the Chiefs are playing and the amount of games the Chiefs have played. I just think that there's a toll that all of that takes. Now, how can the Chiefs manage it? How can the Chiefs go and play these big games every single week? They've got one this week, the Indianapolis Colts playing at Arrowhead, and that is as big a game as Shane Steichen has had since he became the Colts head coach in 2023. Can they summon enough to beat a really good Colts team? Then can they come back and play a Dallas Cowboys team on Thanksgiving on the road that is playing for its season? This is every week for the Chiefs. So again, the amount of games that they played, more than another full season of them over the last 6 years. And then the intensity of that every opponent approaches them with. I think that's a part of it because this has at times looked like a tired team. It'll be interesting to see what Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes can do to get this team at playing at the highest level possible as we get closer to the playoffs. That's one thing they've been masterful at, is finding a way to figure out who they are, to lean into that, and then to create momentum behind whatever that identity is going into the playoffs. All right, and our third and final topic, the NFC North is a big jumbled mess. It should be interesting seeing where this goes the rest of the year. I don't think anybody, myself included, would have thought that a week short of Thanksgiving, we'd be sitting here and the Bears would be in sole possession of first place, and sole possession of first place without even having gotten a consistent high level of play from their quarterback, Caleb Williams. But here we are. The Bears are 6-3. The Packers are a wonky 6-3-1 in second place. The Lions are in third place at 6-4. The Vikings are 4-6. And to me, you look at these teams, and I think it's a different thing with each of them. The quarterback play is a factor in each case, but you look at each one of these teams, and I think there's a different reason they are where they are. To me, like when you look at where the Bears are and why they are where they are, is because I think right now, and it's hard to believe I'm saying this, but they may be the most complete team of the group. They have the least flaws. They don't have the glaring issue. I mean, maybe like it's an edge rusher opposite Montez Sweat, but there's not one thing that you look at and say like, yes, like that's going to get them in the end. And that's allowed them to win different types of games, win different styles of fights. And I think you see an identity that's formed behind Ben Johnson that's not totally unlike the one that he was a part of building in Detroit. you see the toughness of that team and how they're able to run the ball and how violent they play on defense, and they're able to create turnovers, and all these things play into a team that, again, can win different styles of games, which is really important in the NFL. And the really intriguing thing about the Bears is if Caleb Williams can start to build some momentum, if Ben Johnson can find another gear for his young quarterback, then this team could be really dangerous in January. So that's where the Bears are at. That's why they're in sole possession of first. I look at the Packers. Jordan Love hasn't played as well. Their offensive line hasn't been as good as they expected, and they've had the injuries at the skill positions. You were without Christian Watson for long stretches of time. Now you're without Tucker Kraft, who I think was your best skill position player over the first half of the season. Now Josh Jacobs is down. They've been hit with a bunch of different injuries in the offensive side of the ball. It's affected their quarterback. It's affected the way that they've played overall. And, I look at the Packers now as a team that's got to kind of find where its strengths are on offense, given all of the injury attrition. So that's the Packers. Then you got the Lions. To me, the difference in the Lions this year versus previous years is, and I'm going to use that word again, identity, that offensive line. So much of what they'd built had found its foundation in that offensive line group and how good that group was. Are you as good a tackle as you have been in the past? Taylor Decker's a little bit older. Penei Sewell's had some ups and downs this year. Really had some issues with Jalen Phillips. And so where are you at on your offensive line? I think that is a huge piece of a ton of different things that have gone wrong there. And then, you go down to the Vikings in fourth, and that's the one where you can maybe drill down on the quarterback situation a little bit more and say the quarterback situation is directly responsible for some of the things that have gone wrong there. So the interesting thing about this and where all four of those teams are now is I do think that each of those teams have a chance to work those issues out, right? The Packers are going to have a chance to figure out where their strengths are now offensively, given, the context of the injuries that they're dealing with. The Bears are we going to see another level of Caleb Williams? I do think the rest of the roster can sustain. The Lions, are they going to be able to find something on that offensive line to get a higher level of play, the type of the level of play, the really high bar that they were able to clear at that position group over the last few years? Are they going to be able to clear that bar? And then can the Vikings get better play out of J.J. McCarthy, which I think is possible given the work that Kevin O'Connell has done over the course of his career with quarterbacks and where JJ's potential is. So going to be really interesting to see the way all of that plays out. As always, appreciate you guys coming out. You can leave your comments down below on YouTube or on my social media, at Albert Breer on Twitter, at Albert R. Breer on Facebook, at Albert_Breer on Instagram. We will have another Breer Report coming for you tomorrow. That'll be our mailbag, and another one to wrap the week up and look forward towards week 12 on Friday. I'll see you guys then.